€1.08 and €1.16. LBC weather, outbreaks of rain continuing tonight, with showers dying out in the early hours across central and southern areas. Further heavy rain and strong winds reaching the southwest by dawn, a low of 3 degrees. From Global's newsroom for LBC, I'm Lucinda Horsley.
This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. Cross Question with Ian Dale.
Hello, a very good evening. It is 8:03. You're listening to Cross Question, LBC's bi-weekly political panel debate show. Tonight, Cross Question with a difference, because all of our panellists are 21 years old or under. They are representing 4 of the political parties. Layton Smith is a Conservative activist. Chloe White is a Labour activist and co-chair of the LSE Labour Society. Aleisha Stansfield is a Liberal Democrat activist. And Darcy Iveson-Berkeley is a Brexit Party activist. They're here to take your calls, 0345 6060 973. Quite like to hear from some young voters as well, not exclusively, but if you are under the age, well, what counts as young nowadays? To me, anything under 40 is quite young. But hey, what are your priorities in this election campaign? Climate change, housing, NHS, economy? 0345 6060 973. And you can, of course, watch us on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, on the YouTube channel, Facebook page, or the LBC Twitter feed.
0345 6060 973. Tweet at LBC. Text 84850. Cross Question with Ian Dale on LBC.
Welcome to you all. It's great to have you here. Let's go to our first caller. Eddie's in Worthing. Hello, Eddie.
Hi.
Hello.
I'd like to ask the panel, because I'm definitely not a young voter, what do they think the process of selecting MPs that are going to run the country should be? Should they have an audition? Should they have an interview? Because we're asking them to manage a very large organisation, i.e. the country. So how do you find out whether they've got the skills to do it? Because frankly, when I look at the House of Parliament, I can't see that many that I've got much confidence in.
You old cynic, Eddie. Right, well, it's a good question, isn't it? Because I think this is something that I think all political parties wrestle with, and they all have vaguely the same selection procedures at the moment. Chloe White from Labour, how do you think it ought to be done?
Well, I would say in Labour, I think we have got the edge. We are very much got loads of internal democratic procedures, which I really like. What I would say, one thing I think probably we would all agree with, is that local candidates need to be in seats. Local candidates sort of know the party the best. I mean, in Finchley and Golders Green, we have Ross Houston standing, a local guy. Can
I just stop you there? Because if we mention any candidate in any seat, we then have to read out all of the other candidates in the seat. It's the law. So can we try and avoid mentioning any candidates?
I apologise.
No, it's not at all. You want to know.
And I think that's really important, because I think local people representing sort of the local constituency, they know the issues, they've lived there, they know the people, they know the makeup of the constituency. I think that's really important.
And the other candidates, as if by magic, in the Finchley constituency are Conservative Mike Freer and the Liberal Democrat Luciana Berger. Are there no other candidates? No, just the 3.
3-horse race.
Well, there you go. Right, Layton Smith for the Conservatives. How do you think that the Conservative Party should choose its MPs?
Well, the Conservative Party have a system which they go through rigorously. They don't select random people. They have to go through hours and hours of selection. I believe that because it's a snap election, many parties have just rushed through and not looked at who they are, who they're selecting, and this is why we're having issues currently with certain members running for candidacy, that they're not who they're...
There have been more in this election, haven't there? I mean, from all
being
parties.
kicked out for doing stuff that they shouldn't be doing,
So clearly you think the procedures aren't rigorous enough?
Yeah, I feel because it's a snap election, they've rushed through it. Some parties have quicker than they should have and not rigorously looked at who they're actually putting forward.
Aleisha Stansfield from the Liberal Democrats.
Yeah, I would agree with Chloe. Big fan of local candidates, and we do have quite a similar process of local democracy, local members choosing their candidate. But I would also say, in regards to the skills aspect of the question, it's quite, I imagine, not that I'm an MP myself, but I imagine it's
Would you like to be?
oh, I'm not sure it's for me. And this will come up in, 30 years or whatever, and I'll get elected and I'll be, oh, she didn't want to be a candidate. No, but it's not a job that you get much training to, or any training, I imagine, to do. It's not something that you can kind of like go to school and be, I want to be an MP and choose MP modules. So in the skills aspect, I think one of the main things that we need to improve is make sure that there is training available for MPs, or at least support to help them gain those skills that they need to represent people.
Okay. Darcy, now you are alone among our panel of actually having been selected as a candidate,
Yes,
but you decided not to go ahead with it. You stood down.
No, I was stood down.
Oh, you were stood down, were you? Okay, right, okay. I got that one wrong.
Yes,
Well,
unfortunately.
You were presumably rather disappointed by that, because I think you were the youngest Brexit Party candidate.
No, someone's beaten me now in Newport West.
Okay.
But we did it all centrally. As we're a new party, we don't have any MPs whatsoever. I went through quite a rigorous process, and I think that the candidates that the Brexit Party have kind of looked for is people with charisma. They've definitely got to be local, and people that aren't career politicians. And I think we said that we wanted to change politics for good, and I think with the people that we've got standing, I think that we've stuck by our message.
Well, you're 19 years old.
Yeah.
When did you first get the idea of wanting to stand, and how did you just sort of write to Nigel Farage or something? Did you?
No, I was an activist, obviously, with the Brexit Party when it first started, and then on from that, things just happened, and I thought, why not? Let's apply, and off I went, and now I'm here.
Okay. Right, let's continue with your calls. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call. Harry's in St Albans. Hi, Harry.
Hi, how you doing?
Not too bad. What would you like to say?
So first of all, whatever happens between now and the election, I am voting specifically on Brexit lines. The fact that this is still a debating point 3.5 years after the most biggest mandate in UK electoral history is just beyond me. But anyway, moving on to the specific manifestos, I'm just really interested to know if can Labour really look at us with a straight face and make guarantees on their extortionate spending pledge this election?
Which one in particular are you worried about?
Well, it's all of them. It's I've read so many. It's childcare for 2 to 4 year olds, every single one. It's all the money they're pledging to spend on the NHS, and I just don't understand where the money's coming from. But if you believe the newspapers, it's £83 billion, and I'm just scared what's going to happen to my wage.
But you're so out of date, Harry, because there's another 58 billion being promised for the WASPy women. So, Chloe, I would normally come to you first, but I came to you first in the next one. So if you want to go first, you're fine.
And I can also say to you, I can tell you with not just a straight face, but a huge smile on my face that we can pay for these policies. I think, firstly, what I think is really important in this election is to look and not look at Labour as lots of people do, and I think quite wrongly, that we're a party that doesn't know how to spend our money. I think if we look at
I think you can spend it. It's just whether you can afford it.
I think we can afford it. And I think if you look at sort of the Conservatives, we've had 10 years of absolute travesty for so many people.
We've had to cut back on austerity because you spent all the money years ago.
I mean,
you left a letter.
Layton, are we going to really blame the Labour government for what happened in the whole global financial crisis? I think I think that is wrong. But what I would say is we've had 10 years of absolute travesty. You've kept corporation
taxes
manifesto
low. Funded?
Just let me finish.
Yeah.
We've kept corporation taxes low, okay, while 120,000 people have died related to austerity. This was a political choice. And I think what we've seen is that you've gone spending gaffe after spending gaffe. A garden bridge, Boris Johnson wasted, what, was it 10 million on a garden bridge?
46.
46 million. What was the 10 million on? The buses?
Goodness knows.
Yeah.
Was that not Brexit PR campaigning?
There was, what a huge waste of money. And you're really going to sit here and tell me that you guys are the party of business and the party that knows how to spend money?
They spent 100 million or so on Brexit campaigning to get Brexit done. But however, your parties have constantly voted against it and put more delay and uncertainty in front of the country.
Let's keep Brexit out of this for a minute. Let's just concentrate on spending.
But it's fully costed, and what I would say is that if you look at the manifesto and look at how it's costed, it's not going to affect your wages unless you earn over £80,000 a year. Everyone in this country needs a fairer deal. We're asking people who earn a little bit more to pay a little bit more, but it's not significant. And I think if we look at the Tories, what you've said today about nurses, what it works out as is every nurse would be getting paid £17,000. The starting salary for a nurse is 23.
Just on it being fully costed, of course, the announcement came yesterday about the 58 billion for the WASPy women. That wasn't in the manifesto, and it wasn't in the Green Book. So how can you say that it's fully costed?
So I think obviously I'm not a candidate myself, I don't know the ins and outs of it, but I think with these WASPy women, what we have to look at is what sort of a society do we want to be. And this also isn't a something for nothing, because Joe Swinson has said, these are women that have worked their whole life in really, really valuable jobs, and are we just going to discard them now? No, I don't think that's...
Darcy, from the Brexit Party.
Well, I mean, I think the difference is between us and the rest of the parties is that instead of telling the people how we're going to spend the money, we're telling the people how we're going to raise the money. And we're going to raise £200 billion by scrapping HS2. Because it is a complete waste of time.
That doesn't cost £200 billion, it's about £80 billion.
No, I know it doesn't. But there's more.
All right, okay. carry on.
And also we need to cut the foreign aid budget. We're going to do that in half.
And you can say that with a straight face.
I can, yes.
And you're proud to represent that.
Definitely.
You talk about people being homeless and stuff here in this country. We could be reserving just a little bit more than... We're one of the biggest payers of foreign aid in the world.
Fantastic.
We could reserve some of that.
Countries in the world.
We could reserve some of that for our own.
Hang on a second, because that is not the Conservative policy, is it? I mean, they are committed to the 0.7% of GDP. Yeah. That's about £14 billion. He wants to take Darcy wants to take £7 billion.
Probably not cut it that much, but possibly a few percent and keep
over
it for
a 5-year period.
Okay, Aleisha, what do you think of Labour's spending policies?
I think obviously with announcements being made sort of off the cuff, like I was reading a report earlier that said that John McDonnell was actually opposed to the WASPy women thing before it was announced today. So I think it's sort of... It's not 100% true to say it's fully costed. But as Lib Dems, we've also committed to spending more, investing in our public services, using the £15 billion Remain bonus to invest in our public services.
How much?
50 billion.
Oh, I thought you said 15. I was going to say higher.
But I also think sort of us debating spending here is sort of not as important as it has been in other elections. This is an election where pretty much everyone is pledging to spend more.
A lot.
Quite a lot more. So I think attacking Labour for spending that bit more than the Tories...
It's quite a lot more.
I don't agree with it, but it's not one way you can say we're cutting back because the Tories aren't. They're pledging to spend more.
Layton, are you uncomfortable about the levels of spending that the Conservatives are offering in this election? Because it seems to me that it is a bit of an arms race, which Labour are winning in terms of how much they want. Well, actually, not as much as the Green Party, it has to be said. But are you worried that the Conservatives are going to forego their traditional reputation for fiscal prudence?
No, I think they've done the best decision. They're being realistic, unlike the Labour Party. They've put out there, you talk about trust in politics and things like that. At least we've put out what the realistic view is and what we can actually spend rather than going into debt. You talk of taxing people over, is it 80,000?
80,000.
Yeah.
It's only a tiny, tiny bit of money.
Yeah, but the rich aren't stupid. They will get their money and move it to other countries where it's cheaper.
I think we all know.
And then you're going to lose out the taxes that way. For instance, Sir Alan Sugar published his tax returns. He pays £56 million in tax. He also said if Jeremy Corbyn becomes Prime Minister, he will move his money out. That's £56 million in tax every year and jobs that he's going to take with him.
But Layton, these people make up a tiny proportion, and I think that's a fundamentally flawed argument. I think that's a really easy argument to make, but I don't think that's a plausible argument. I also think if we look at huge companies like Amazon, they're paying 5% of their corporation tax. Someone that earns maybe
You're talking about income tax though, not firms.
No, but regardless, these people aren't. That people are sort of evading tax, and we have this really toxic culture in this country where we're like, oh my gosh, I've got to pay tax, and it's like, actually paying tax should be something that we're really proud to do, because as a country we have some amazing, we have our NHS, we have a really good public school system. We should be really proud to fund them because we all benefit from them.
Just to be clear, you weren't accusing Amazon of evading tax, were you? You might have been accusing them of avoiding it.
Tax. I wasn't accusing them of evading tax. Obviously, tax efficiency, I think, is what they call it.
Thank goodness for that. Right, don't forget, you can watch us on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk. You can watch us on the YouTube channel, on Facebook and our Twitter feed as well. Let's go to another question. Tim is in Scunthorpe. Hello, Tim.
Hello, Ian. Good evening, sir.
Hi.
Good evening, panel. May I just quickly validate my question? I'm a ex-member of Her Majesty's Forces. I'm a veteran. My family have made a considerable contribution to the defence of this great nation at great cost. I suffer from PTSD from my service in Northern Ireland, and my nephew of 19 years is one of the youngest soldiers to have been killed in Afghanistan. I'd just like to ask the panel how they consider and what contribution they feel that this country should be making towards our armed forces. Indeed, the yield of the GDP that's being put into our armed forces, and how do they hold our armed forces in esteem?
Okay, well, so broad questions there. Aleisha Stansfield for the Lib Dems.
Yeah, like Chloe said earlier, I'm not a candidate. I can't give you exact figures, but I know today we've pledged more support for defence, and specifically relating to the mental health aspect of your question. I personally suffer from PTSD, and I know from when my traumatic event happened, I had a massive waiting time for proper mental health support, and that's something that we need to do better on for everyone, regardless of whether they're veterans or they've suffered some other kind of trauma. And that's why we're pledging to put a penny on the pound on income tax and to ring fence for our mental health services and make them better for everyone.
And you've actually promised to spend £1 billion more on defence than the Conservatives. That's a bit shameful, isn't it, Layton?
No, I've had a flick through Boris's manifesto book from yesterday, and there is clear evidence there that the armed forces are going to be looked after, whereas other parties, don't want to Labour, are kind of against the armed forces. Yeah,
I would think that is just not true.
You can't say that they're against the armed forces.
They're not as for it compared to other parties.
What we say about the armed forces?
They're not very supportive.
No.
All right, well, look, the defence budget is around £45 billion a year. The commitment is that we continue to spend 2% of GDP on the armed forces. But, I mean, bearing in mind that the size of the army has come down exponentially under the Conservatives since the beginning of the coalition, would you like to see the army expanded? What would you like to see as sort of priorities in the defence budget?
I think priorities in the defence budget is more the aftercare for the people. You know, people suffering from PTSD, as you said beforehand. You know, that's the key thing, because when they come out, there's many of them that can't focus on real day life things and need help, and the process out of that. That's probably the priority that needs to be put forward in the defence budget.
Chloe, looking at Labour's defence policy, it is to retain Trident, which will come as a bit of a shock for Jeremy Corbyn, I suspect, because a lot of people look at Jeremy Corbyn and they see somebody who has a track record of not standing up for Britain's armed forces, don't they?
Yeah. So firstly, I would like to say to the questioner, thank you for your service and sorry for your loss. What I would say is that firstly, read our manifesto. We are committed to the armed forces, but what we're also committed to do is, as you both said, the aftercare, and I think this is where Labour really holds strong. Our NHS has been chronically underfunded. Labour are going to invest heavily in mental health services, which I think is really important, but also homelessness. There is a huge amount of people who were in the armed forces who are homeless, and that is utterly shameful, which we've seen under the Conservatives and the Liberal Democrats supporting austerity. Labour have pledged to end homelessness, which I think is...
Is that even possible?
Well, I think it's not just possible, but I think it's quite simple. I think what we've seen is that we have got chronic lack of social housing. We have chronic underfunding of the NHS. As I just said, people can't get access to help. In our manifesto, there's a really, really strong policy on helping people who fall into addictions because of mental health, which is a really common thing, and absolutely normal. But I think that what's happened is, after years and years of austerity, we have all of these sort of myriad of factors that have built up, which has led to people, especially in the armed forces, not receiving the care that they deserve and that they have earned.
Okay. Darcy?
I mean, I would say about the armed forces and defence, we've said that we would commit to 2% of GDP. I mean, in regards to the aftercare and the mental health side, I mean, I personally am very supportive of that. Unfortunately, this year I lost my sister to suicide, and the care for her was basically non-existent. So in that case, I mean, we really do need to invest in mental health because it's becoming rife, and it's unfortunate.
Tim, what would you like to say in reaction?
I understand really what the genre has been spoken about. I think it's quite a generalised response, really. As far as I'm concerned, the 2% of GDP is insufficient. We need to be investing a lot more in that. And I would also say to you that we need to be considering also issues on our doorstep. Northern Ireland, that I partook in, specialised in when I was working there, was on our doorstep. And don't let anybody, folks, those gentlemen and ladies on the panel, don't ever anybody try to convince you that wasn't a war. It was. And I've served my nation. I've done what I've needed to do, but I now find myself homeless. I'm sleeping in my car. I'm having therapy for PTSD. My whole life's broken down. My marriage, I've lost everything. And as I said, I've also got family who are very close to me. I've just lost only a couple of years ago their 19-year-old boy. Some families are really, really going through it. And I think, we need to look at America and see how those veterans... There's nothing more important than defending the nation.
Okay.
And I think we need to look at that.
Tim, thank you. I'm just going to widen this out a bit because you've all, to one extent or another, mentioned mental health here. And Darcy, you've just told us about what happened in your family. When I was your age, mental health was not even discussed. It wasn't an issue. When I was at university, nobody really talked about it. For you as young activists, as young voters, what do you want to see your own political parties actually doing on this issue? Because there's a lot of talk about mental health, but precious little action, it seems to me. Aleisha?
As I said, I'm really, really thrilled to see us committing to ring-fencing funds for mental health, not them generally going towards healthcare, because it is a specialist area that does need improvement. I'd like to see parity of esteem between physical and mental health, but that's not quite good enough. I'd like us to go further because the provision for physical health as well isn't good enough. I'd like to be able to see a situation where you can get therapy, counselling, whatever it is that you need when you need it, not 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the line.
Why do you think that isn't being provided at the moment? You mentioned that you had an experience,
yeah,
and that the help wasn't there for you. I take calls from people all the time when we do mental health phone-in saying, I was suicidal and the waiting list was 2 years. Well, not good enough, is it?
It's absolutely not good enough. I think there's a whole host of reasons why we're facing a mental health crisis. Like you said, we're seeing more awareness and recognition of mental health problems, but there are also a lot of issues in society which might be contributing to mental health problems, so we need to tackle that at the source. And also, again, our NHS is chronically underfunded, especially in mental health. And that, I think those three would be the main three that I would recognise. I'm sure there's lots more, but they're three things that really need to be improved.
Chloe, isn't there an argument here for saying, well, look, OK, if we're prepared to spend £58 billion righting a wrong, nobody's disagreeing that it was a wrong. I'm sure there are one or two that will, but anyway, why couldn't we actually say, well, actually, let's devote a lot of that money to mental health services instead?
I think we already are. So we're pledging to invest £1.6 billion if... my notes on our manifesto.
You've prepared for this?
I have prepared for this, Ian. Are you impressed?
I am.
So 1.6 billion in mental health. And then what we have, which I'm really excited about, is a Healthy Young Minds initiative. I think that the Labour Party have recognised that young people, and especially young vulnerable people, need some more support. And they need, as Aleisha said, they need support when they need it. They can't wait 2, 4, 6 weeks. I mean, I've had my own experience with family trying to kill themselves, And it's really, really hard, especially when sort of the person that is suffering from the mental health crisis needs support and they're not getting it. But also all those around them, I can imagine you have maybe suffered with this, Darcy, those around them also need that support and they're also not getting it.
Definitely.
Darcy?
Yeah, I mean, we haven't got any figures regarding how much we would invest, but we know that we need to invest. And I mean, in one way that we can invest a lot of money into mental health in the NHS in general is, like I say, for one, leaving the European Union, because we wouldn't have to pay the 13 billion annual contribution. So already we're saving money, and we've found ways to raise money, and these can go into these vital areas, these key treasured areas and public services that we love. So yeah, we've just got to invest, and one way by doing that is leaving the European Union.
But what about the NHS staff that we'll lose through leaving the European Union in such a way that you guys are proposing?
And what about the services that we'll lose that are funded by the EU? Yes, we send them money, but for example, where I'm from in the North East, we've got EU funded services which help people
recycled British money, that is.
It's not recycled.
It's recycled.
Money.
Well, I trust the EU to help us more than I trust Westminster, from what I've seen.
Yeah, but you lot are in Westminster. That's the problem. So it's you guys that are at fault.
I think what you've got to understand, Darcy, is that's just a flaw, I think, in political understanding. We don't have a mandate. We aren't majority parties. If you want to look at the fault, then you can look to the Conservatives. But I don't think it's fair to blame it on Labour.
And I also think it's unfair to blame activists and say that we're in Westminster, because of course...
I wasn't saying that you... I'm saying your parties are.
Our parties are in Westminster, absolutely, and the Brexit Party are trying to get into Westminster. And so I'm not sure that that's a fair argument to make.
Right.
We're all trying to make our difference in all parts of the country.
Conservatives. I mean, been in power for 9 years. Clearly, things have progressed on mental health care, but by no means enough.
No, obviously the NHS is stretched as far as it possibly can. I think possibly you talk about people not coming because we leave the European Union. Boris has put forward a pledge that the NHS staff will be able to get a visa and come here. There'll be no barriers to stopping them apart from just getting a visa.
But what we're not just talking about, I think, what you've got to understand is this whole idea, your whole hostile environment, the idea of immigration is that when you talk about NHS staff, you're talking about nurses, but what we have to remember is there's a whole host of other professionals that you maybe do not hold in as high esteem as nurses, but do just as much work, like ancillary staff. Okay, so I think what you've got to remember is you're going to lose so many people that all feed into the NHS because of your idea of Brexit.
The Australian-based point system,
which is a heavily flawed system.
It will look at people.
Well, we might come on to that. You never know in the next half an hour.
I hope so.
Paul says, no cheating, Ian. Put your glasses on the end of your nose and give them a maths teacher stare.
That's terrifying.
That's the way to keep you in order, apparently. Thank you for that bit of advice, Paul. We need more calls. 0345 6060 973 is the number to call if you want to put a question to our Cross Question Youth Debate panel. You're listening to LBC. I'm Ian Dale. It's 8:30, and Lucinda Horsley has the news headlines.
Showcase says it started showing a film again about young gangs from this evening, but with increased security. Follows a large fight at a screening of Blue Story in Birmingham on Saturday, and altercations at other UK cinemas. The View Cinemas chain's withdrawn the film from all of its sites. Uber says it will use facial recognition for drivers in an attempt to win back its licence in London. The ride-hailing app will be allowed to continue operating while it appeals the decision. Transport for London says at least 14,000 trips were made with drivers who weren't the ones shown on the app. A team's investigating reports of a light aircraft crash off the coast of North Wales near Anglesey. The Coast Guard was called just before 1 o'clock this afternoon to the Puffin Island area. Authorities have confirmed only one pilot was on board. LBC weather: outbreaks of rain continuing tonight, but showers dying out in the early hours across central and southern areas. Further heavy rain and strong winds in the southwest, a low of 3 degrees.
This is LBC.
Shoes off, slippers on. There's nothing like coming back to a warm home after a long day at work, especially when you've been stuck in rush hour for what seems like an eternity. Luckily, with Hive Active Heating, you can turn your heating on from wherever you are. And with our Black Friday offer, enjoy 25% off, plus a free Amazon Echo Dot. Search Hive Heating to buy now. Hive services require broadband and Wi-Fi. Terms apply. Offer ends 2nd December.
Euronics is different. Independently owned electrical retailers in over 600 local stores across the country, offering great brands, great service, great value, and always proud to be local. That's the Euronics difference. And right now, they've got some great deals for Black Friday too. Definitely worth a look, if you ask me. Find your local store or shop online at euronics.co.uk.
I'm Douglas Murray. In my new book, The Madness of Crowds, I seek to inject some sense into the discussion around the 21st century's most divisive issues and call for free speech and sanity in an age of mass hysteria. The Madness of Crowds is available now.
Fly Ryanair to Dublin this winter. Cozy up with some live music in one of Dublin's pubs. Check out the free museums or head to the coast for delicious seafood. Fly to Dublin from just $14.99 per person one way. Ryanair. More choice, low fares, great care. Limited availability. Booked by January the 8th, 2020 for travel by end of March 2020. For conditions, see ryanair.com.
Dell's biggest Black Friday ever is on. Save up to £700 on Windows 10 laptops and desktops. Plus up to 50% off across our award-winning monitors, all with free delivery. Call 0800 085 4878 to talk to a Dell advisor today. That's 0800 085 4878. Or visit dell.co.uk/SB deals for details on the best offers in Dell's biggest Black Friday ever. Limited time online offer. Hurry while stocks last. T's and C's apply.
We need to leave now. Monty, where's your other shoe? Some things in life are hard to find quickly. Your new boiler doesn't have to be one of them. With Swell Heating's online tool, find the perfect boiler from top manufacturers like Worcester Bosch in under 5 minutes. Visit swellheating.com. Rely on us to keep you warm.
Cross Question with Ian Dale on LBC. Text 84850.
8:33 is the time. You're listening to Cross Question. You can watch us on the LBC website at lbc.co.uk, the LBC YouTube channel. You can catch up on all my election interviews on that as well, Facebook page and Twitter feed. With me in the studio, it's our youth debate panel. Chloe White is a Labour activist, co-chair of the LSE Labour Society. Aleisha Stansfield is a Liberal Democrat activist. Darcy Iveson-Berkeley is a Brexit Party activist. And Layton Smith is a Conservative Party activist. Right, let's go to Yasmin, who is in Amersham. Yasmin, very good evening. What would you like to ask?
I was just wondering what the panel thought about candidate election pacts within constituencies.
So like the Remain Alliance and the Brexit Party standing down in 317 Tory seats. What do you think, first of all?
Well, I think that, honestly, Labour should be making more pacts with the Lib Dems and Greens, especially kind of the Labour Remainers, but I know there's obviously some issues going on between them, but I think they should be really putting infighting behind them at this stage because it's such a crucial vote in the next month.
So we've got effectively a Remain alliance and we've got a Leave alliance, kind of, even though it's kind of one-sided. Darcy, let's start with you. Obviously, the Brexit Party has stood down in 317 seats. We said at the beginning you're one of the candidates that has been forced out of the election race. Isn't it a bit anti-democratic, this? Surely voters in each constituency should be able to vote for the party that they really want to vote for.
Well, possibly. I mean, I think in my constituency of Southport, I mean, the incumbent MP is obviously a Conservative, but he's also a Brexiteer, and I know him, and I think that I was always scared about splitting the vote, but I was happy to put my head above the parapet, if you like, and I think that it was a good thing that we did stand down. I mean, I was having second thoughts, but I think it's a good thing. I mean, the Remainers are doing it, so why shouldn't we? I mean, I know it's maybe a bit more one-sided than we would have liked, but it could have been counterproductive, because then in my constituency of Southport we could have ended up with a Lib Dem MP, and we still could, but I mean, now that I've stood down or been stood down, the chances of that are not very likely.
Has Nigel Farage sent you 100 quid back?
I don't know, I haven't checked.
Do you expect it back?
I couldn't care.
Really?
No.
God, if I was 19, I'd care if I...
If you don't want it, you can send it to me.
I was sponsored.
Oh, were you? Okay.
What did Farage get for standing down?
Sponsored by whom?
A friend of mine that wanted me to stand.
Oh, I see what you mean. Right, okay. Aleisha, now obviously there is this Remain alliance between the Greens, Plaid Cymru and the Liberal Democrats. And the Liberal Democrats have basically stuffed the other two parties, haven't they? Because you're standing down in 9 seats and the others are standing down in 51.
No, I wouldn't agree with stuff the other parties. I think we're stronger electorally. We've got a better record of electing MPs in a lot of seats that we've, or rather the other parties have stood down for us in. So if we look at, say, like the Brecon and Radnorshire by-election, with the Greens and Plaid standing down, that gave us a fantastic result. Like, I was on the ground campaigning. It was absolutely brilliant to see support coming to us from other people who want to remain. We've already said this is, in some people's mind, the Brexit election, and if what you want is to remain in the EU, being able to oust more Brexiteer Tories or Brexiteer Labour people.
Why put up candidates against people like David Gork in Rickmansworth? I mean, that seems to be a very odd thing, where he's actually gone out of his way to say to people to vote Liberal Democrat, and yet you're still putting up a candidate against him.
I was not involved in those negotiations.
No, I'm sure you weren't,
wish I was that important.
You must have an opinion. I mean, is it fair to do that? You look at, of course, I've now mentioned a candidate, so we'll have to read that one out as well. We'll come to that in a second. But I think of Exeter, where without mentioning a candidate, you've got there somebody who's the one who was MP, has been a staunch Remainer, and yet he's having a candidate up against him. I think it's Greens in that one. It's a bit weird.
I think some people might say it's a bit weird, but it depends which party they're from. Like, there might be a lot that some members of the Labour Party agree with the Lib Dems. There might be some things that a lot of Lib Dems agree with the Labour Party. But we are two separate parties, and we have very different stances on Brexit. I'm not sure that one of us standing down for the other really helps, because we do have different goals. We have different visions for what we want our country to look like. So why would we try and get each other into...
Okay. Layton, how grateful are you to the Brexit Party?
I'm very grateful for Nigel getting them to step down, yeah. Because, for instance, in Moreton and Outley, is it Moreton Outwood?
Outwood,
yeah. The prediction polls beforehand, when the Brexit Party were standing in there, looked like that the Conservatives were going to lose their seat, which would have been catastrophic, and now they've stepped aside. It's given us a lead. However, I still think they may have not gone far enough, because there are certain seats where we're only a few points away, and you're still campaigning to stand in.
Do you think, in retrospect, it would have been good for Boris Johnson to have said, well, OK, we recognise that as a gesture. We're going to stand down our candidates in 10 seats that we've never ever won. We'll give you a free run.
I'd probably go against my party on this and say, yeah, I would slightly agree with that, and say if the ones that we clearly would never win and we haven't won for years, there's massive majorities, we should have stepped aside in reverse for the Brexit Party.
Well, I know you're all gagging to hear the other candidates in the seat that David Gork is standing. He's obviously an independent. Labour is represented by Ali Aklakul, and the Conservative candidate is Gagan Mahindra, and the Green Party is Tom Pashby, and the Liberal Democrats represented by Sally Symington. Chloe?
So firstly, what I would say is... I think with the Lib Dems, if the Lib Dems are so strongly Remain as they say they are, and they are just absolutely obsessed with Remain, that's all they care about, why would you stand candidates in seats like Chipping Barnet, I won't say the candidate, I've learnt from my mistakes, and Canterbury and places like this, and all that is going to do in really, really key Labour Conservative marginal seats where you've got a really strong Remain candidate like we're doing Chipping Barnet. All it's going to do is split the anti-Brexit vote, and then what we've seen is just these absolutely wacky bar charts that we don't know where they've come from, but there seems to be lots of them, sort of suggesting that a Liberal Democrat, if it was between a Conservative, a Liberal Democrat and a dog, would win. And I think that is actually somewhat quite shameful on the Liberal Democrats if they want to do as they say they want to do and completely avoid Brexit.
OK, Yasmin, thank you very much for your question. Let's move on to Jerry, who's in Burton-on-Trent. Jerry, what would you like to ask?
Oh, good evening, Ian, and good evening, panel. I'd like to ask, do the young people believe that 16-year-olds should be allowed to vote? And on a sort of second question, if I may, what's their views in how the EU is likely to change over the next 5 to 10 years? Oh, my goodness,
we could be here all night on that one. Let's concentrate on the first one, Jerry. Layton?
No. is the answer. I was too young for the referendum result in 2016. However, I agree that I shouldn't have been allowed to vote anyway, because talking to peers and friends, they didn't know anything about it. There was obviously one or two who was very interested, wanted to know, have their own points across, but most of them didn't know and would go, oh, I'd vote for this because somebody supports this one, they follow their friends. I don't agree that 16-year-olds, most of them, are informed enough.
But 18-year-olds are.
Yeah, well, they're legally classed as adults as well.
But what about in the Scottish referendum when you would have been about, 10 years old or something? Okay, not quite that young. But, I mean, there was a massive rally in, I think it was in Glasgow, like 7,000 young people went to that. And that was widely seen as one of the best events because the best questions were asked it. And they were all, I think I'm right in saying, sort of under 18s.
That's only a small proportion of the whole country. Obviously, I say, there's many people who are happily involved in it, want to know, have their own views. But the majority of them, I don't agree that they understand it fully enough. Maybe give them special education at school, maybe in the mornings teach them about it possibly, and then consider it, but not at the
Aleisha
moment.
from the Lib Dems.
Yeah, I think that 16-year-olds should have the vote. I think we've made that quite clear throughout the Brexit process, our manifesto, everything. I just find it a bit odd that you would say that if people are under 18, they might be led by the way that their friends vote, or they might be misled by some statistic or whatever, when that's exactly what we've seen pre and since the referendum. And also, as if that's not the way that politics has worked in this country for forever, if that's not exactly how voting trends and party loyalty work. You vote the way that the people around you vote. You vote the way that you think because of what the people around you think.
The only reason you and Labour want 16-year-olds to vote is because that's the only way you could possibly win, because people are sensible enough not to vote for them.
But we can turn that round, Layton. You've got 16 and 17-year-olds like myself. When I was 16, I had a single mum who was earning £11,000 gross a year working for the government. I knew what was happening in my life, and I had agency like loads of 16 to 18-year-olds do. And I think we should be giving them some credit. And yeah, as you said, I think what would be a really good idea is that if schools were required and mandated to teach politics in a neutral way, to a greater extent than they do. But I think the reason why the Conservatives don't want people to vote is because that young people have seen the absolute travesty of what they have done in the last 9 years. And
What about what Jeremy Corbyn said about Shamima Begum, the young girl who went to Syria? He at the time said, she was only 16 years old, she didn't know what she was doing. Now if she didn't know what she was doing, yeah, he would want her to be able to vote.
I think what we need to do, Ian, is be realistic here.
It's a good point, though, isn't it?
No, I actually don't. No, I disagree. I think what we see with Shamima Begum is a young girl who was heavily indoctrinated.
No, sure. That wasn't my point. That wasn't my point.
I mean,
my point was that if he thought that she wasn't adult enough to make a proper decision, how could you have other 16-year-olds making the proper decision to vote? And I say that as somebody who actually agrees with it.
Being indoctrinated by ISIS, is very different to choosing which party to vote for in a general election, fundamentally.
And also, it's something that could happen to anyone, and anyone that happens to should get support.
Who?
For
Shamima Begum.
No, what a load of rubbish.
Oh, go on, inject
No, it's a load of rubbish, absolute rubbish. I mean, Shamima Begum knew what she was doing. Why should we be making excuses?
How do you know she did? How do you know she wasn't groomed?
I don't. If you look at some of the statements, I can't think what they were, but there were some statements. Look it up, and she's made that she doesn't regret what she's done, and then she's made a bed. She can lie in it.
She's been a victim. She has been indoctrinated.
She's now presumably 19, 20 years old, but at the age of 15 or 16, which is when she went there, can you not accept that at that age you are much more susceptible to brainwashing, grooming than you would be if you were an adult age?
It depends how vulnerable of a person you were.
Well, exactly. Should we not be protecting vulnerable people?
She shouldn't be allowed back here.
Are you saying that vulnerable adults shouldn't be allowed to vote?
Not with terrorist organisations.
But surely you've got to see that the poison that terrorist organisations can inject into vulnerable people's lives. I think that's
so. Why would we bring them back here? Why would we?
They've got a leader that's a terrorist.
No.
I didn't want to say that.
This is the first time in 45 minutes that you're behaving like normal politicians, talking all over each other. So I think it's a good time to go to another break. It's 8:46.
James O'Brien, Monday to Friday from 10 a.m.
Rules are very important. The more you are committed to a hierarchical structure, particularly a class structure, you really need rules. People have to know their place. But the bit they never tell you is that the rules don't apply to the people at the very top. He just thinks he can behave with impunity, and then he's going to give an interview, wave a little, do a bit of royally rhetoric, and everyone will forgive him.
Leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
Marooned in deep space and no sign of help? Don't panic. And with the AA, the app lets you track the mechanic right to your side.
I'm thinking of joining the AA.
I don't think they accept cats as members.
Who said anything about being a member? I want one of those shiny yellow jackets. Ow!
There are lots of smart reasons to join the AA. You'll get unlimited call-outs, our tap and track app, and we'll get you going again in around 30 minutes of arrival. Switch to a different kind of breakdown service from just £5 a month. Visit theaa.com. New customers only. T's and C's apply.
Here's the thing. How can BT's superfast fibre and our powerful smart hub with a Which Best Buy be so affordable? Simple. When we do Black Friday, we do it properly. $24.99 a month for 24 months with a $19.99 setup fee. It's our lowest ever fibre price. Less than you'd expect for broadband this good. Offer ends 7th of December. Search BT Broadband.
CPI increase each March starting 2020. New customers was $29.99 per month over 24 months, $37.99 per month, 25 terms apply.
Some regard me as a national treasure. Well, that's very kind of you, but let me tell you about a hidden national treasure. Cello TVs. Cello are the only British manufacturer of premium quality LED TVs, but without the hefty price tag. 16 to 65 inches, manufactured in the UK, there's a Cello TV for everyone. This Black Friday, get a 65-inch smart 4K TV for under £550. Search cello.tv.
Can you think of a better use for the time you spend keying in your business accounts? Good. Because smarter bookkeeping from Sage reduces that time dramatically, simply by taking care of repetitive tasks. It's helpful ideas like these that make us the UK's #1 for managing finance, operations and people. Trusted by over 1 million businesses nationwide. Find out more at sage.com/automate.
My name's Ian and I run the Christmas Centres for Crisis. Many people in Britain are homeless, stuck in hostels, sleeping on floors, even on the street. You can change this. Our Christmas Centres provide people with food, safety and support and show them how Crisis can help them find a home and a job in the year ahead. You can reserve a place at Crisis this Christmas for just £28.87. Go to crisis.org.uk now. Help someone take their first step out of homelessness this Christmas. Thank you.
You know the trainers I really wanted? I got them 70% off.
Wow, that's amazing. Where from?
Online at Zalando. They have so many Cyber Week deals on right now.
Attention travellers, we have reached our final destination, Black Friday at Zalando.
Save up to 70% on thousands of shoes, accessories and clothing. Zalando. Free to be.
Cross Question with Ian Dale on LBC.
It's 8:49. One of you has fan mail. It's from an MP. Or former MP, obviously now not an MP.
A candidate.
Wes Streeting. He's saying, enjoying listening to Ian Dale's Young People's Cross Question on LBC tonight. Thought they gave we haven't finished yet, gave a good account of their parties, particularly, brackets, of course, close brackets, Chloe for UK Labour. Really impressive.
Thanks, Wes.
Be still your beating heart,
Indeed.
Chloe. Now, you've got a bit of a celeb story, Layton, haven't you?
Oh, yeah, I went on Question Time, obviously, a few weeks back, and it had a bit of a political response. Boris Johnson himself even retweeted it and posted it, and then when I met him at the Conservative campaign launch, he went straight over to me and shook my hand and said, "Oh, it's you off the TV."
Well, that is a bit celebby. Aleisha, can you compete with that?
Maybe. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to say it on the radio. But so during the leadership hustings in the Lib Dems, Jo came to Newcastle, where I live, to come and do a hustings with Ed, and we put her up in our student flat.
She stayed in a student flat?
It was a very nice student flat. I am very tidy. But
for a Lib Dem.
I'm going to try and not take offence at that.
Darcy, can you compete with any of this?
I mean, at the Brexit Party North West conference, I did a speech there on stage with Nigel, Farage and Richard Tice, and I've met them a few times. Lovely people. That's about it, really.
Fantastic. Right, let's go to another question. Cameron is in Coventry. Hello, Cameron.
Hello, Ian.
Hi.
My question is, knowing that only 35% of the vote is needed for a majority in the House of Commons, is a majority government enough of a mandate regarding Brexit?
I'm going to let you have some license here. Make this sort of about Brexit in more general terms, if you like, because we are literally 10 minutes from the end. Aleisha, let's start with you.
It's difficult to say. It's been a mandate for everything that every other party has done. That's how our government's worked. But absolutely, I think that we should switch from first past the post. It's not a suitable system to run a country with. But in terms of a mandate on Brexit, I think, say for a Lib Dem parliamentary party to go from 20 to 326, I think that's quite a clear support for the Lib Dem message.
It would be if it happened.
It would be, wouldn't it? I would have a field day.
How many seats do you think the Lib Dems are going to get?
I'm unsure. We were talking about this earlier because polls, I think, are a bit wild to be trusted, so I wouldn't want to put any money on it.
Do you think the revoke policy has actually cost the Lib Dems quite a bit of support?
No, I don't think so. Whenever I've been canvassing or phone canvassing, I've not spoken to a single person who is not voting Lib Dem because of the revoke policy. And I think it's quite... We've always been clear that we wanted to stop Brexit. I'm not sure that's a massive surprise to anyone. So I think us going for that policy really isn't a shock.
OK, Layton, for the Conservatives?
Yeah, well, I kind of agree with the Lib Dems that actually at least they've got a solid point of where they want to go. At least people know what they're voting for. And I believe possibly, 35% is probably good enough because we've had so much uncertainty between 52, 48, all these different polls. We just need to get Brexit done.
Well, you got the soundbite out. Yeah, very good. Chloe?
So I think what we need to look at is the fact that I'm not saying we shouldn't have had a referendum. We've had it now. But you can't have a referendum where people are voting on something that's completely out of the scope of imagination. I mean, no one knew what Brexit was going to be. And with our policy, well, I'm sorry, Darcy, but we didn't, did we? You've got soft Brexiteers. We have hard Brexiteers. So my family, they voted for Brexit. They are absolutely shocked and appalled by the Conservatives' version of Brexit with absolute derogations into workers' rights. But what we've got now...
Like what?
Boris Johnson is not bringing us out of EU workers' rights directives so he can make British workers' rights better. Boris Johnson is going to compete and has already started with an increase in sort of 0-hour contracts and people's...
Do you know that?
Well, that is exactly what's going to happen.
There's actually a decrease in 0 hours contracts.
But what's happened? No, but over the last 10 years, 0 hours contracts, what we've seen is that, yes, we've got more people...
What percentage of people in work are on 0 hours contracts?
I don't know.
2%.
But that's still people who are working in jobs where they don't have proper pay,
but a lot of them actually like to be on... single mothers, students like to be on 0 hours contracts, don't they?
But lots of single mothers don't, and lots of students don't. And I think it's... I completely refute that. And what's happening is we're going to have a race to the bottom on workers' rights. We've got a ridiculous 14 million people in poverty, 9 million in work.
Why is it that Britain has exceeded European standards in virtually every area of workers' rights? If there was going to be a race to the bottom, wouldn't that race have started already?
But we are seeing it already because what we're seeing is, yes, some people are fine, they have protections, but the most vulnerable people in this society do not. We have people that are having to work 3 jobs at a time. They don't have sick pay. They don't have proper holiday pay. They don't get to see their children. We have huge derogations of workers. Look at what happened to the women and men that work at Asda, where they're being forced to sign contracts where they have
there's no European directive that deals with that.
No, but what we're looking at is that when you take away that European directive, you take away our protections, And what we're seeing is Boris Johnson does not care about workers. He's not a reliable person.
Darcy?
He's not a man of the people.
In regards to the voting system, I think that possibly it does need reforming. Well, it definitely needs reforming. I don't think we need to make it more representative. In regards to Brexit, I mean, there's no such thing as a hard Brexiteer or a soft Brexiteer, in my opinion.
Well, yes, there is.
It was invented by Remainers.
No,
it was invented
not.
by the Remain Alliance.
Have you
Leaving the European Union means leaving the European Union
with no deal.
Well, yes, because that is leaving the European Union.
And what is that going to do to people? That is going to cost 2.7% of GDP.
So you want to stay in the single market and the commons
Customs Union.
Customs Union, yes, sorry. But you want to stay in that. That is not leaving the European
That is
Union.
going to absolutely devastate our economy. You are putting ideology over
What's
people.
Labour going to vote for? What's Jeremy Corbyn going to vote for?
Gonna be
Is he going to vote for?
Even though he
Leave?
campaigned.
No, he wasn't. Hang on. Let's put this one to rest. Harold Wilson was not neutral in the 1975
he expressed
referendum.
a preference.
He campaigned to remain in the European Union. I mean, the Corbyn supporter on Question Time put this about.
I don't think it was a Corbyn supporter. I think it was an activist.
I think he was.
Well, he was communications officer for the Labour Party. That's
well, now he's not now.
Well, I don't know, but Chloe, just answer this one because I think this is what Layton was just referring to there. How can you have somebody who wants to be Prime Minister suggesting a referendum on which they won't express a view? The electorate regard that as sort of ludicrous.
No, I don't think so, Ian. I think he's taking a pragmatic decision, and that's what politics needs right now. We've got Boris Johnson, who's peddling some sort of odd disaster capitalism, which is going to hurt working families in this country. Okay, or we've got Jeremy Corbyn, who's saying to people, right, the country's been split, it's divided, we've got huge rising levels of hate crime, people are deeply unhappy. Okay, let's organise and sort out a deal with the EU that is fair, that protects workers' rights, that protects the environment.
Which I think is fair and good, but I won't actually advocate to the electorate.
You say we've got Boris Johnson and Jeremy Corbyn. We do, of course, have Joe Swinson who's saying, stop Brexit and use the £50 billion.
But look at her popularity. It's going down every time she appears on television.
I'm talking to you about the policy. The more... if we save £50 billion from our recovered economy, if we stop Brexit...
No, we couldn't.
No,
Jo Swinson has gone from stopping Brexit to now stopping Boris Johnson because she knows she can't win.
Yeah, they're both the same thing. Boris Johnson, Brexit.
To a final text, which I'm sure you're all going to enjoy this one. Andrew in Hornchurch says, with Michael Bloomberg, the latest celebrity candidate to declare that they're standing for US President, which UK celebrity would the panel like to be UK Prime Minister?
Chris Ramsey.
Chris Ramsey.
North East Prime Minister.
Who is Chris Ramsey?
Do you watch Strictly, Ian?
No.
David Attenborough.
No, hang on. Chris Ramsey. Who is Chris Ramsey?
Chris Ramsey is a comedian. Very funny. Has a podcast. You'd love it.
Okay.
Yeah. He's also on Strictly this year. Absolutely brilliant. But I think someone with a bit of humour, someone with a bit of common sense and a Northeasterner, that's who I want.
Okay. Layton?
David Attenborough. Because the moment he speaks, everyone's engrossed. You know, he does these climate videos and channels and everything. The moment you see that, you want to change the planet yourself. He makes a big impact.
Maxine Peake.
Maxine Peake. Now, I do know who Maxine Peake is. I'm trying to remember what she's been in. She's a very famous actress.
In Silk. So she's a fellow... Well, pretend.
And she's a Labour Party groupie, isn't she?
She is,
yes.
And she's a fantastic. She's a working class girl. She knows what's happening in the country.
Darcy.
Between Nigel Farage, obviously, and George Michael, I was a big fan of George Michael.
George Michael,
Nigel Farage
he's dead.
is not a celebrity.
Nigel Farage is a celebrity,
No,
but yeah,
he's
George
not.
Michael.
Well, we could go into that a lot more, but we haven't got time. Thank you all very much indeed. Layton Smith, Chloe White, Aleisha Stansfield and Darcy Iveson-Berkeley. You can listen to this on the Cross Question podcast if you missed any of it, or catch up on the YouTube channel because it's right there right now. Coming up in a moment, we're going to talk about Uber because Transport for London have decided to withdraw Uber's licence to operate in London, saying that its safety record and safety procedures are not good enough. Uber is appealing the decision, so as of tonight, Uber minicabs are still operating in the capital. Now, the Mayor of London, Sadiq Khan, said today, I know this decision may be unpopular with Uber users, but their safety is the paramount concern. Regulations are there to keep Londoners safe. Well, whose side are you on, Sadiq Khan's or Uber's? If you're an Uber driver, there are 45,000 of you. What do you make of this? Do you fear for your job? If you're an Uber customer, who's right here, Sadiq Khan or Uber? 05 6060 973.
On your radio, on Global Player, and
Play LBC.
leading Britain's conversation. This is LBC.
From Global's newsroom at 9 o'clock, Uber to remove its licence to operate in London is extraordinary and wrong. The ride-hailing app will be allowed to continue operating whilst it appeals against Transport for London's decision. It found at least 14,000